States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for being here tonight. With us tonight, we have Mark Medler, our Director of Finance, Misty Brents, Clerk of Council, Dave Kennedy, City Manager, Joe Braun, City Solicitor, Tom Smith, Assistant City Manager, Sean Ray, our Police Chief. We also have former council members Neil Ori, Pat Mays, Todd Osborne, the President of the Loveland City School District Board, Kathy Lorenz, is in the house tonight, and the President of Little Miami River Chamber Alliance, C.C. Collins. So thank you all and the rest of you for being here tonight. First matter, I believe the Vice Mayor has a motion to make.
Yes, I'd like to move to amend the agenda to add a Black and Orange Day onto the agenda as the new item A, and then move the current item C to be item D, which is the retirement of Canine Mac.
Just an amendment, we're going to move retirement of Mac will actually be D.
Yes.
Yes, he goes to the D. You're right. Thank you. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Did we do the roll call?
Not yet.
You want to do that now?
Yeah, let's do that.
I'm so excited about Black and Orange Day.
So roll call is Mr. Bateman?
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Blair?
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Butler?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Here.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Here. And Andy is here via Zoom. It's a little bit of difficulty. All right, so the first item is Black and Orange Day. I have a proclamation, and I think we have a few other things that are going to happen. I'm not sure. Whereas the City of Loveland and the Loveland City School District share a unique bond with the Cincinnati Bengals in that our school mascot is a Bengal tiger, and our school colors are black and orange. And whereas Bengals fans from Loveland watched with excitement as the Cincinnati Bengals, led by head coach Zach Taylor and quarterback Joe Burrow, finished their 2021-22 regular season with a 10-7 record, securing their first AFC North championship since 2015. And whereas on January 15th, 2022, at Paul Brown Stadium in the wild card round, the Cincinnati Bengals defeated the Las Vegas Raiders 19-26 to win their first playoff game since their 1990-1991 season. And whereas on January 22nd, 2022, the Cincinnati Bengals defeated the Tennessee Titans to win their first divisional playoff game since 1989 and the first road playoff game in franchise history. And whereas the 2021-22 Cincinnati Bengals roster is made up of talented and gifted players, some of whom are already being recognized for their performance this season, including quarterback Joe Burrow, hailing from Athens, Ohio, setting a franchise record 4,611 passing yards, and named the 2021 Bengals MVP by the Pro Football Writers of America. Wide receiver Jamar Chase being named 2021 Offensive Rookie of the Year. Kicker Evan McPherson named to the 2021 All-Rookie Special Teams selection. Running back Joe Mixon for being selected to the 2021 Pro Bowl. And hailing from Cincinnati, Ohio, defensive end Sam Hubbard for being nominated for the 2021 Walter Payton Man of the Year Award. Whereas this Sunday, the Cincinnati Bengals will face off against the Kansas City Chiefs in the 2022 AFC Championship game, making it the third time in franchise history the Bengals have been in a championship game, with their last championship appearance being in their 1988-1989 season. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Bailey, by the power vested in me as Mayor of the City of Loveland, and on behalf of our City Council and residents, do hereby proclaim January 30th, 2022 as Black and Orange Who Day in Loveland, Ohio, and urge all citizens to cheer the Cincinnati Bengals to victory in the 2022 AFC Championship game this Sunday afternoon against the Kansas City Chiefs by dressing in black and orange. Furthermore, I urge all citizens and Bengals fans to continue to show their home team pride and spirit by rooting for the Cincinnati Bengals on their journey to Super Bowl 56, because why not us?
Who day?
Who day?
All right, we're getting situated. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Reed. I'm the principal at Loveland High School, and as you can see, we have our student athletes and our cheerleaders here tonight. The city of Loveland, obviously, as well as the city of Cincinnati, and we hope the whole state of Ohio could not be more thrilled with the Bengals' success. And as we talk about the Bengals, when we look at our star players that we have, obviously Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have been Tigers for a long time, from LSU and now Bengals Tigers. And so tonight, we would like to make honorary Loveland Tigers out of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and wish them nothing but success this weekend.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's do. Can we do a quick, just very quick, a picture with everybody up here?
Oh, hey, picture.
And we'll stand behind.
We've got one more now.
Oh.
And while they're,
Members, we'll stand up.
is this on?
What?
While they're,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yes, go
yeah,
ahead.
while they're setting up, I'm Matt Kapsikevich. I'm the vice president of the Loveland Athletic Boosters, and on behalf of the Loveland Athletic Boosters, for making that clutch field goal and boosting the Bengals into the AFC Championship, we wanted to make Evan McPherson an honorary Boosters member.
Matt, too. You're back. I think you'll be able to see us, or should we go down there? Go down. You sure?
Yeah, because others can't see.
All right. Is Tom or someone to take a picture? Oh, I like it. I like it. All right, thank you all for being here. All right, next on the agenda is the 2021 Stan McCoy Senior Community Service Volunteer Award from the Parks and Recreation Board, our chair, Lisa Freeman.
Good evening, Council. This is Dan Timmerman. He's on the Rec Board with me. I am Lisa Freeman, the Rec Board Chair. The Loveland Recreation Board is honored to present this year's Stan McCoy, let me say it right, Stan McCoy Senior Community Service Volunteer Award to Matt Kapsikevich. Matt has served the Loveland Youth Baseball Organization in just about every way a person can serve. He's been a coach, a manager, a tournament organizer, a community collaborator, a fundraiser, a board member, the board vice president, the board president, and he's even subbed as an umpire and broadcaster. There were numerous people who wrote to us about Matt's leadership. Among the most moving messages we received regarding his service was this. In 2020, when the world was in turmoil due to the pandemic, many Little League organizations decided to cancel the season. Matt realized how important it was for us to bring some normality to these children. He helped us develop a plan to address safety protocols, got it approved, and we had a season. Kids got to be kids during one of the most traumatic times in our country's history. A mark of a true leader in a community is the lasting impact they have on everyone they touch. Mr. Kapsikevich, thank you for your service to Loveland, and congratulations on being this year's Stan McCoy Award winner.
Is he going to say a few words? Are you going to say a few words, Matt? Podium?
Sure.
And then we'll do a picture. All right.
I'll just say thank you, and it's been an honor and a privilege to be part of the community and to serve our youth. I'd encourage everybody, to the extent that you can, get involved and volunteer and give back, and it brings us all together, being part of the community. And I'd say just be kind to our umpires too. So, thank you.
Council, let's go.
Dave doesn't have to pronounce it. Yes.
All right, Hearts of Fire Weekend. Nancy Duff, Sherry Fenning.
Are you ready? Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy, and this is Sherry. And Misty wanted us to talk to you a little bit about the upcoming Hearts of Fire event that's happening, where sparks will fly on February 11th, 12th, and 13th. So you guys will hear all about it. You can help us spread the word.
Let's start with the businesses. Just about every business, shop, and restaurant has stepped up to provide some sort of Valentine's special for that weekend. There will be activities for children, teens, adults, married and single, hopeless romantics, and even those who think that Cupid is stupid.
For example, the Cappy's Will You Accept This a Rose auction will be happening Friday night, and all the money raised is going to the Forgotten Dog Rescue Shelter.
The Newlywed Game will be going on at Mile 42 on Saturday.
And the Loveland Hardware Store will be hosting a puppy kissing booth and pet adoption event, and hoping to find all these special dogs their forever home.
The library has lots of craft projects going on for the kids all weekend. The full list of activities, deals, and specials, along with the days and times, can be found on the City of Loveland's website under Hearts of Fire.
We have to mention a few other activities that are going to happen around town that you need to be aware of. The first one is the ice sculptures. I don't know if you've heard, but this is going to turn out to be what I think is going to be the highlight of our event. There are about 22 or 23 ice sculptures that have been bought by businesses and individuals to be displayed around town. They will be delivered on Saturday afternoon and lit up Saturday night. So you can go on a walking tour with your family, take lots of pictures, and enjoy them. And the ice sculptures will be around until they melt, so I think they're going to be here for a while. Yay! Okay. Also, there's going to be ice sculptors demonstrating how it's all done. And Misty promised us that when the Bengals win on Sunday, we get a Who Day ice sculpture, right? Yeah, we do. Yep. Who Day is, are we going to start the Who Day chant? Okay.
All right, this brings us to the Eskimo Kisses Village. This will be located across the street from City Hall in the running store's front yard. There'll be lighted cornhole games set up, a skee ball game made of ice, and fire twirlers roaming around the area, lighting up the night. A DJ will be playing the best love songs of all time, just to keep the party going.
The Works, okay, are you sitting down for this one? The Works is trying for the first time ever a single in the city speed dating. Yes, speed dating is come to Loveland. And it'll be held in the train car attached to the Works on Saturday night. You need to pre-register for this, so hurry up. There's limited seating. So if you have any single friends, it is your job to get them to sign up, okay?
Right. And Pat from the Loveland Stage Company has arranged to have a kitty kissing booth at her place in hopes of getting all the little kittens adopted for Valentine's Day.
Right? So, for people that need their love lives looked at, psychics will be available at Lemons and Limes Boutique from 5 to 10 Saturday night, okay? And she's going to tell you what your love life has in store for you. The readings will be available on a first-come, first-served basis. Sign-ups start in person at 5 o'clock, and each reading lasts about 10 minutes and will cost about $20.
And for those of you who need to know how to cast a love spell, those classes will be available to do as well. The classes have a limited availability also, and they need to be signed up for ahead of time. That's online. You gotta learn how to cast that love spell.
That's right. So, and maybe you'll feel like renewing your wedding vows this year. And you can do that here in Loveland. The line is going to form behind Mr. and Mrs. Butler, who are celebrating their 40 years together. Look for the Just Married trolley and hop on. I hear Elvis might be officiating later in the evening.
Of course, the big masquerade ball will be happening Saturday night at the Event Center. Tickets need to be bought online ahead of time. The after party will take place at Bishop Quarters, and the fireworks will conclude the Saturday night festivities at 10:30 p.m.
Okay, lastly, this was tricky, but Sherry and I are thinking we can pull this off. We have arranged for the Hearts of Fire weekend to conclude on Sunday night with the Bengals winning the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Best Valentine's Day present ever, so you're all welcome. Okay? All right. That's all we got.
Sherry and Nancy and Missy and the rest of that committee, you all always do a fantastic job. And this is exciting. It's the first time we're doing this, so thank you for organizing.
Listen, so we want people to sign up for that speed dating. We don't want a train wreck this spring. We want
Got it. Looking forward to it. All right, next is the retirement of Canine Mac. Chief Ray.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. With us tonight to recognize his many years of service is Canine Mac. Mac was born in 2013 in the Czech Republic and was imported through Holland to the United States, where he was purchased and donated by the Matt Haverkamp Foundation to Loveland in 2015. Nancy Haverkamp's in the front row. Thank you, Nancy, once again. Mac earned his name with his size and power, affectionately being known in training as the Mac Truck. Canine Mac wasted no time making an impact in Loveland. Mac has over 200 deployments, assisting on numerous drug cases, finding felony suspects that may never have been caught, finding evidence, and attending many, many community events as an ambassador for the Loveland Police Department. Mac knows when it's time to go to work, but is equally comfortable showing his softer side, especially with children. Mac performed countless demonstrations over his 6 years of service, even allowing ear scratches and hugs from the kids. Mac and Kyle have always been top performers. I'm going to brag just a little bit. Kyle doesn't like me to brag, but I will. Many people don't know that Mac and Kyle took top patrol dog 2 years in a row and typically place top 3 for narcotics work nationally in the North American Police Working Dog Association. He's had quite a distinguished career, but here's 4 quick notable cases. Canine Mac tracked 2 local burglary suspects in Westover Village, literally right to their front door. The suspects had stolen cash, knives, and a handgun from an elderly victim. All the items were safely recovered, and the suspects were arrested. Kyle and Mac responded to a murder scene where he tracked the suspect into a busy neighborhood. While the suspect had already left the area, Mac was able to find and recover the suspect's shoes, hat, and the handgun used in the murder. These were key pieces of evidence used in the eventual conviction. In another case, Mac cornered a felony domestic violence fugitive that had been on the run for several months inside what they suspected was a detached garage on East Broadway. The human officers searched but could not locate the suspect. Mac's behavior and refusal to leave alerted Officer Biebelhausen that perhaps the human officers had missed something and they needed to check again. Sure enough, the fugitive was located inside the garage on the second check and taken into custody with the help of Mac's persuasive behaviors. One of Canine Mac's last tracks was the longest in local recent memory. For just under 6 miles in the summer heat, Mac tracked a wanted felony domestic violence suspect excuse me, who had fled in a vehicle, then on foot, making several river crossings and through difficult terrain. Mac's work led the officers to the suspect, located where the exhausted suspect gave up several hours later. For this case, Mac and Kyle were recognized by the Claremont County Chamber of Commerce for their valor and determination. Sadly, Mac was injured and received a major back surgery in April of 2020. The surgery allowed him to work for almost another 2 years, but eventually his injuries became too much of a risk and required him to retire. But don't worry, Mac loves his retirement job on a farm, chasing coyotes away from the chickens and the goats he lives with, and mentoring his new younger brother, Canine Cruz. Please join me in a round of applause for Mac's distinguished service to the Loveland community. We have 2 presentations. One is for Kyle. We have a photo of Mac signed by the officers.
Oh, nice.
We're a couple short because we have a couple that are out on isolation quarantine. But that's for Kyle. And another announcement. Many of you know that we have a meeting room here called Canine Argo meeting room. We are going to reimagine that room to a canine conference room to recognize all of our canine friends. And that will include pictures of each of the dogs and a plaque similar to the one that's out here on the wall. There will be a photo of the most recent dog along with the service years of all of our dogs. There will be a twin up at the Safety Center and here at City Hall as well. So I'll pass that around.
Nice.
Chief, can we do a quick picture? And
Absolutely.
Nancy, will you join us in the picture?
As long as Kyle's okay with it. You do one more.
Yeah, right. Lots of activity.
All right, but I didn't want to do this before, just because I knew we had all those festivities. But I do want to recognize Bob Cox, who passed away this January 21st. Bob Cox was a lifelong resident, as I believe. Is that right, Neil, of Loveland, Sherry? His wife is obviously Linda Cox, who was a former mayor of Loveland. Bob was on our Planning and Zoning Committee and volunteered on a lot of things throughout the last many years, and was a fixture, both he and Linda, at pretty much every major event that happened in Loveland, certainly since I've been around. So want to keep Linda and the family, and Bob, in our prayers and thoughts, and if we could just have a moment of silence for Bob. Thank you. All right, next we are honored to have Major Steve Aerosmith of the Warren County Drug Task Force.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I have to say this meeting's going to be tough to top. This is my fifth one.
Do you have a cheer you could do or something?
Wow, I can't top all that. So, but it's great to be back this year. As you know, we skipped last year due to the COVID-19 and all the things that were going on. We just felt it was best that we just go ahead and skip all around. So missed everybody's jurisdiction last year, but we did distribute our annual report. I did bring the 2021 report with me. That should be in front of you unless I missed someone. So I wanted to be here again to say thank you to the City of Loveland and this council and the residents and Chief Ray for the continued support that we receive as the Warren County Drug Task Force. And I would like to just touch on a couple things in our annual report, and for those who don't know about our unit, maybe touch on a few things that we do and what we've seen over the last calendar year. So another busy year for us, as you will see. Our task force remained a multi-jurisdictional drug task force responsible for conducting drug trafficking investigations throughout Warren County and the city of Wilmington over in Clinton County. We also remain part of the HIDA program. Most of you are probably familiar with that from years past, but it's mentioned in the annual report as well. HIDA stands for High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. We're what's called an initiative of the Ohio HIDA. The HIDA program is a federal program that provides funding, and it requires the collaboration of federal, state, and local law enforcement, pushes us all together under one roof with the sole mission of targeting drug trafficking investigations in a particular area. It's a fantastic force multiplier for law enforcement. In 2021, the Warren County Drug Task Force had 21 full-time law enforcement personnel with the sole mission of targeting drug trafficking investigations. So we don't have any agencies in our jurisdiction that can assign 21 people to do just that on a daily basis. So we really feel that it's the most effective way to target these problems. As the task force commander, I continue to report to what's called the policy board. Chief Ray sits on our policy board. He's one of my many bosses. They represent 16 law enforcement agencies from the area. Sheriff Sims from Warren County, the Warren County prosecutor David Fornshell, and all of our police chiefs. So once a month, I'm required to report to them at a policy board meeting. In fact, it's next Tuesday, where the chiefs are briefed on just ongoing task force activities and investigations. So if there's anything that they want us to do different, if there's something going on in their particular jurisdiction that they would like us to take a look at, those are the times that we have those discussions. Overall activity for 2021, our task force had 669 new cases and tips that came into our unit. We had 300 felony arrests, 101 misdemeanor arrests. Part of our unit, we have a 6-person uniform interdiction team that blends with our detective staff. They conducted 1,501 traffic stops, deployed their canines. With that team is 4 canine units. They deployed their canines 110 times. Seized 64 firearms. We executed 122 search warrants. So we remained very busy in 2021, consistent with 2020 and probably the end of 2019. Our primary drug threats in our area remained methamphetamine and fentanyl, taking up most of our time just about on a daily basis. So fatal overdose deaths, drug-related overdose deaths in Warren County increased from 2020. We had 68 deaths in 2020. That was up to 74 in 2021. Our non-fatal overdoses were down a little bit. We had 165 non-fatal overdoses in 2020, and we were down to 143 in 2021, so we were thankful for that. Funding for our unit remains inconsistent. Thank you for your financial contribution that you make to us as well. We're funded by a variety of grants, by the HIDA program, by financial contributions from the Warren County Commissioners, and then all the jurisdictions in Warren County or that whose city has a piece of Warren County. So in addition to your annual report, you have in front of you our overall contribution list from 2021, just in case you were interested. I get questions on that sometimes. So again, thank you very much. Hopefully the world calms down and everything will be okay, and I'll be back next year. I can come anytime you need me if you have questions. Thank you. Thank you again. We couldn't operate without you. So
Thank
glad
you,
to
Major.
take any questions if you have them.
Anybody have any questions? We do appreciate all the work you do. We appreciate you taking the time to come and give us an annual report in person. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You want to?
Mayor and Council, next on the agenda is Ed Williams. He's with TEC. If you recall, at the last council meeting, I tried to sort of tee this up. We have a relatively unique opportunity to try to address a long-standing problem with delayed traffic, especially during spring, summer, fall months along West Loveland at the bike trail crossing. Ed and I have been working on this for quite a while. The city executed an agreement with Ed to do a study. Ed's had a myriad of results, but there's one specific recommendation that sort of surfaced above everything in terms of how to maybe not solve, we're never going to solve, but really address the traffic issue. So Ed is with TEC Engineering. Ed exclusively does all the traffic engineering for the city, and they do a wonderful, wonderful job. So I want to just go ahead and let Ed do it. The presentation is in council's packet with some video issues tonight. Anyone who wants to see it, if you didn't, you can look at his slide. Just go to the council agenda on the website. But Ed?
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. As Dave said, my name is Ed Williams. I'm a traffic engineer. So, a couple years ago, throughout the years, we've done several studies, and a couple years ago, Dave and I and Cindy met and talked about specifically the bike path crossing and trying to take a look at the crossing and trying to come up with a solution that makes it safer for everyone, and addressing the crossing and some of the congestion and stuff like that. So as part of the project, we looked at traffic counts, we looked at pedestrian counts and bike counts. We talked to people who were out there and tried to understand what they were thinking as they use the bike path and use that crossing on West Loveland. We looked at crash statistics in the area, trying to understand, what are the patterns? Obviously over the years we've looked at West Loveland Avenue from a traffic perspective, and this study really focused in on this crossing solely and trying to come up with ways to, as I said, make it a safer and better crossing. So through the study itself, we looked at several recommendations. And several of them were good and some of them were not good. It's just throw things out there and see what kind of happens and what we get. And we looked at, passive solutions, which is more signage. And obviously you have signage out there, it's in some cases not working the way that it was intended. We looked at things to try to notify vehicles differently, some intelligent type solutions. Ultimately, what was looked at, one of the recommendations that came out was a traffic signal for that crossing. And, what the idea behind that was try to establish the right-of-way at that crossing. And, because I do think there is a conception or an idea talking to the bicyclists that, they'll stop. They know we're going to come and they'll stop. And unfortunately, that may not always be the case. And so, we looked at the idea of a potential traffic signal for that crossing with some detection that would change the signal. That signal could then be coordinated with the other traffic signals on the corridor so that it can be run in coordination. We looked at a sole traffic signal for the crossing, and we also looked at trying to tie that into the Railroad Avenue and the parking lot. Dave and I talked to ODOT. They have, with changes in funding and everything, they have split their safety program this year. At the end of this month, there is a new grant through the safety program, the Ohio Safety Program, which is the Systemic Safety Program grant, and that is a 90% grant, and that is what we have proposed to submit a grant on that. Obviously, there's a study done. If the grant is successful, there would need to be design and studies done ahead of that, but that is the grant that we would like to apply for.
Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments? Mr. Butler?
Couple questions, Ed.
Yes.
So on page 14 is the graphic of the light. I'm assuming that would face the bike path? So
Yes.
Yeah, so that would be a signal to pedestrians and cyclists.
Yeah, so
Is that correct?
Yeah, so what we had proposed, the newer manual of uniform traffic control device. I can talk for hours on traffic, by the way, if you really want. I know it's
We don't have that much time, Ed.
just as exciting as all the other stuff that happened tonight. But the new manual does allow for bicycle signals, and there are Columbus. There's a ton of bike lanes and bike signals that indicate that are put up specifically for the bikes, and that is what we are proposing. And then there would be a traffic signal, obviously green, yellow, red for West Loveland, that would allocate that they should stop and that the bicyclists could go.
Okay, so there would also be, under this scenario, a light for cars as well?
Correct.
Okay. Second question, several citizens have suggested to me that the bypass might be a solution worth looking into, and that would entail coming from south to north, perhaps at Broadway, detouring cyclists who are planning to go through the city to the west, up Carl Brown Way, back behind Nisbet, and then picking up the bike path again behind Nisbet, north of Nisbet. Did you have a chance to study that concept?
So we did look at that a little bit. I do know that moving a bike path, even if it's a bypass, there are environmental issues with that.
Okay.
So there would need to be some additional environmental studies especially with the designation of the bike path. But I do think that the downtown bike path obviously has economic benefits to businesses and stuff. There are obviously bicyclists who go straight through, and I do think that is something that could be looked at, but I think that's a much longer term project.
Okay.
Because of some of the environmental impacts.
So south of West Loveland, you could use existing roads, but you're saying north of that, you would have to cut a new bike path around Nisbet Park.
Correct.
Okay. And if the city applies for this grant, would that, I think it's called the Bike Path Safety Program? Is the grant program?
The Ohio, the ODOT Systemic Safety Program.
Okay. In theory, if the city were to receive this grant, would it just be directed towards the light scenario, or would it also study the possibility of a bypass?
So the grant itself would be for the light.
Okay.
It has a scope that is applied for. Now there are other funding sources and things that could be looked at, but this funding source is specifically for this crossing in the light.
And it's a 90%?
Yes.
Okay, 10% local. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Hart?
As you were talking, you mentioned that there would be some additional expenses, some extra studies that would have to be done if we got the grant before we could able to implement that. You mentioned some other stuff.
What I meant is like the design of the project. So in designing the project, there would be looking at making sure that the timing works with existing traffic. Obviously, the study that we did is a couple years old. All of that is so that the grant is a 90-10. It's 10%, which the match can be design funds, and so that can be included in that. And the studies I meant the beginning process, the preliminary engineering of the project.
Thank you.
Mr. Bateman?
So it says that the cost estimates have an option with or without Railroad Avenue, and I apologize if you touched on this. It's a little bit hard for me to hear remotely, but could you talk a little bit about what the Railroad Avenue option would incorporate? Is that a third light, just a third signal that would create a little bit more synchronization between the three different options at that intersection?
So what that would entail is it would be one light that you could add in. You would have your crossing phasing, but then you would also have the railroad and the parking lot opposite phasing to allow that to safely get out and not compete with the bike path crossing, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, because I think for me, that's certainly something to consider, because it's not just a perpendicular intersection of cars and pedestrians and cyclists. There's certainly the cars going to park in the Via Railroad, and like you said, the parking lot opposite that, that cause a lot of the traffic congestion. So, so what you're saying is that there would be a light that would basically stop both the bike trail and the West Loveland Avenue, and then create a green light, so to speak, for Railroad Avenue.
Correct.
Turn into or turn out of.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just add real quick, part of the reason why the light on Railroad would be so important is the viewing angle. When you were on Railroad, you would not know that the traffic approaching from the east and the west toward the bike trail has a red light, and you would potentially be turning right into a flow of pedestrian / bike traffic that has a green. What Ed and I spoke with about the other day was, because no one wants clutter, that we would likely on Railroad be able to put a pedestal type light, a black pedestal light. We would not have to have the mast arm style light. We could get away with a pedestal light, which could be antique style. It would fit in with that period, and it would not be overly big deal. But if you picture yourself on Railroad and the approaching traffic has a red light, you won't see it because of the distance required. So while they have a red light, it knows the whole purpose of this. The way Ed explains it to me the best is the time that the traffic is at its least traveling on West Loveland is the time that the traffic on Carl Brown has a green light, because 90-something% of that traffic is taking a left over the bridge. At that time, the vehicular traffic signals would know that, make that traffic red, and give the pedestrians and the bicycle traffic green light. Everything's good to go. We know. But what's happening is Misty's sitting here, for example, and she makes that right turn, or anyone makes that right turn, you're not going to see that light. There has to be a separate light. Pedestal would be a much more attractive than another mast arm. So.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
Ed, are mechanical gates anything that would be?
So, one of the things that we looked at and we talked a little bit about, and it still has an option to be included, was there are things like that. There's out in I believe it's in Harrison on one of the bike paths out there. They have it's almost like a corral where it's a zigzag to get to the crossing, where it makes the rider slow down and potentially even get off their bikes, so that they approach the crossing on foot rather than on their bicycle, so that they then are almost forced to stop or do stop. And so those things are potential that could be added in with the design. I think something like that, it could help compliance.
Any other questions, comments, Mr. Ping?
There's, in my experience on the bike trail, there are a number of people that have just pretty much disregard for the signals and traffic that's there now. It's granted it's not lights, but has this type of light been put in somewhere else where they had this kind of problem, and did it make a big difference, or does there need to be a period of enforcement as well that's coupled with this to try to drive home that this is a real traffic light, you need to stop, you don't just coast through because you feel like it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak from experience, I guess. I do think you would need some enforcement to reiterate what it is. I do think, to some extent, you know, the crossing has been there for a while, and I do think that from us talking to the people that are on the bike path, I think the conception or the idea is they're going to stop, and I can just go through because they'll stop. And you know, I do think, you know, you guys have added, you know, the flashing sign, you've added, you know, stop signs and stuff, but the crossing itself is ultimately looks the same. I think, you know, adding a traffic signal adds a different measure out there that reinforces who has the right of way. You know, it's just like a signal that gets added at an intersection. A red light, I don't have right of way anymore. Well, does that mean that someone's going to day one comply to it? Maybe not. So it probably will need some enforcement, but I do think ultimately it is a defining thing that defines right of way.
Yes.
So what would enforcement look like?
Chief Ray and I've discussed this since the beginning of the process. It would be a combination, but I would think in the very early days it would be an officer standing there, handing out, we're not handing out tickets, but handing out more or less a flyer or some type of thing that said, you know, I'm sorry, Sean, I'm chief, I'm sorry, but that's what you and I originally discussed.
We discussed several things. There's several options you could do. It could be an officer that just stands there and literally stops people when it's red and tells them to go when it's green, just to condition them into that light. It could be written warnings, it could be citations. You could do any of those, but obviously we would start with the warnings first and proceed upward.
Anyone else? I guess my question regarding the rerouting the trail, you wouldn't reroute it entirely. I mean, we would still have a trail, so you're still going to have people crossing there. And I guess they're going to then, if you reroute, the bikes have to cross somewhere else. It seems like you're just now having to double the problem to some degree.
Correct. I agree. I think, I mean, obviously, I think that there's a benefit to having the bike path where it is. If you tried to have a bypass or something for that trail, you still will have people crossing in downtown. And I do think that trying to provide a means and as I keep reiterating, the right of way, you know, defining who has the right of way, because I do think that some of the concerns and some of the things that I've seen and talked to people when we're out there is the misinformation or the misunderstanding of who has the right of way at that crossing, and you know, thankfully it hasn't led to any issues. So.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Butler?
I think the scenario of the bypass, though, is that you'd be using an existing intersection, at least for part of it. That is West Loveland and Broadway. And as a occasional cyclist myself, I know that people that I know who cycle and so forth are more likely to stop at what they would consider a real stoplight.
Correct.
As opposed to what they would consider this, like, as you said, I'll just sail through it,
Right.
or I think John said. Unfortunately, that's kind of a mentality of a lot of cyclists, but and something we'll have to address through enforcement and other means. But that's sort of the concept, at least as explained to me by some of the citizens that I've talked to, of the bypass concept, is that you're using an existing intersection.
Yeah.
But you would have to cut some sort of bike path activity behind Nisbet to get to link up over by the bridge.
Correct.
So.
Correct.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your...
I will stick around if there's any questions.
Okay. You're welcome to. You don't have to. This is going to be a long meeting. We're happy to have you, but we understand. All right, next is open forum. First is Lindsay Cole.
Well, hello. I have not been to a city council meeting like this before, so it's very exciting. No one loves dogs, the Bengals, orange and black, Houday more than I do. And my mini-me, Elizabeth. I'm Lindsay Cole, and I'm running for the 27th district, which is the Hamilton County portion of Loveland. So I just wanted to say, moving forward, although the redistricting has been a little bit crazy, you can follow my journey on golindsaycole.com. I am a former Bengal, so orange and black has been part of my life for a very long time, even though it was a decade ago. I still love the Bengals and love everything that our city has to offer, and I want to be that voice for the 27th district in Columbus. So please go to lindsaycole.com, follow this campaign, and all the blessings moving forward, and Houday for those Bengals on Sunday. Take care. Thank you.
Todd Osborne.
Todd Osborne, 1100 Sunrise Drive. Good evening, Council. Tonight, I speak on a topic that's been discussed on and off in these chambers for 2 decades. Traffic calming on Wall Street. Between the vehicles that at times do drive above the speed limit to the line of sight issues, pulling onto Wall from Park, Ohio, and Kiwanis Park, I believe it is time to install 2 sets of stop signs. Also, with the advent of the still unnamed dog park at Kiwanis Park and increased promotion of recreational walking between Phillips and Kiwanis Parks via the Phillips Park Conservancy, there will be new vehicle and pedestrian audiences. In the past, speed has been monitored. However, the Wall Street neighborhood has not been afforded the same traffic calming as, say, Hannah Avenue, another main ingress-egress street to the city. The proposal I present tonight would add 2 sets of stop signs to Wall, 1 each north and southbound traffic. The first set placed at the entrance of Kiwanis Park. This will help with exiting the park, but will help with egress from Ohio and Park Avenues onto either north or southbound Wall Street. Line of sight of oncoming traffic can be difficult in these 2 intersections. The second set of stop signs should be placed at Shady Crest and Wall. This placement is the first street entering the city from the north and would help maintain a calmer speed through this stretch of Wall Street. In addition, this could somehow slow traffic along the northbound Fallis Road and approaching the curve towards the high school. Speed humps should not be considered. I would ask the council refer this to the city administration and staff for review to bring a safer environment to one of the more accessed streets of the city. Thank you, and Houday.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Sharon Scovanner. Okay, tonight I decided to let the people of Loveland speak to you. These are recent comments posted to social media by people other than me, none of whom I've ever met. This was comments about Homerama. Loveland is like the drunk guy at the bar, asking for just one more, except they're talking about houses, and they're both lying. More traffic to deal with in Loveland, just what we need, and more green space gone. I have lived in Loveland since 1967, have seen a lot of changes, not all good in my opinion. Miss our wonderful little town. Oh great, more traffic like we don't have enough. Don't like taking the green space away. Do we really need more traffic? So wonderful, like you need more traffic on already overcrowded and dangerous roads. Good luck getting Mayor Bailey to listen. She doesn't believe citizens should have input. It's all about her vision and hers only.
Good luck figuring out traffic issues. It's the traffic congestion, not parking, which is the primary problem for beautiful and historic downtown Loveland. I live in Brandywine, and during rush hour, it's always backed up, coming down 48 into the city and backed up in the evening coming across the bridge in Loveland. For years, the city of Loveland has known they need a new bridge in addition to the existing one to handle traffic needs of the community, yet nothing has been built. Yet the city is more concerned about buying property like Homerama for $900,000 and selling it for $300,000. What's up with that? The lost money on this property, something smells foul there. I don't think they have the community's best interest in mind. They have their own agenda in mind. Same with the parking garage, and especially the zoning change by Century Hill and 5 nice homes to now townhomes. The traffic is only getting worse there, so they are not attentive to the needs of the community, especially traffic problems. Sadly, it comes down to the almighty dollar and greed. The infrastructure to handle this development, as well as the development of the townhouses on Route 48, is not there, and our leadership knows and does not deal with it. Just build and build and build. It definitely is not the small town that we used to love. I would just love our town of Loveland to stop this unnecessary building. Can we stop developing what little green space we have in the area? These developers have ruined the abundance of natural beauty we had in the area. The traffic in Loveland is ridiculous. It's a nightmare already driving through there. The city of Loveland can't take care of what is there. It's time for the people to put a stop to the madness about Grailville annexation and the Dries proposal. Adding more traffic to an already overcrowded downtown Loveland, we are already breaking at the seams. This is about the dumbest proposition taken. No more damn housing. Yeah, sure, we need more traffic on our roads that are already getting more and more congested. This is ridiculous, and I will be at the meeting to oppose this. Stop building more subdivisions. Loveland is not a metropolitan, and we don't want that here. It's bad enough. We don't need more traffic with only one bridge. This is about one simple thing, the impact on our already near overcapacity infrastructure, period. Nothing else, just that. Those making these decisions are ignoring those issues. They just want to build something to bring in more taxes. Problem is, that's been the mantra for years, and the traffic has continued to get worse. Figure out a traffic plan that actually works, then come back and talk about adding more cars and people. Loveland just wants tax dollars. They don't care about the quality of life. Loveland is as crooked as the day is long. I live on the east side of downtown Loveland, on 48. There is no other practical route around Loveland for many of us. The city has shown no real interest in solving the traffic problems. Downtown Loveland is almost to the breaking point of being a road rage incubator because those in charge don't either care or are too inadequate to address it. Until we get council members to listen to the citizens, nothing will change. Who keeps voting in city council? Stop voting them in. They are all greedy. Time for new blood. Pertaining to the parking garage. Did Loveland provide parking for Kroger, Shoppers Haven? Since when is it the city's responsibility to provide merchant parking? Need to address traffic flow through Old Loveland. Do we need this garage? Will it be self-supporting, or is it an expensive structure that will only be used on warm weather weekends? It's okay for Loveland to remain small. No one gets this. Bigger doesn't mean better. It's always about the money. You have to remember this city isn't just for consumers. It's our home. I disagree with the whole mindset, frankly. As we continue to add places to spend money, you won't persuade me. So we're talking a lot about traffic here. And Tom, at our request, Tom and I met with Mike Meldon and Sherry Hamlin for 3 hours this past week to talk about traffic and a few other issues. And we all agreed that a committee needs to be formed to solve the traffic problems in Loveland. By a show of hands on council, who on council, by a show of hands, thinks that traffic and congestion in Loveland needs to be addressed? Who agrees? Who agrees? Let the record show Mr. Butler, Mr. Hart, Mr. Phelps, Mayor Bailey, did you?
I will not subscribe to what you are doing being what anybody is thinking up here. I think that's an unfair and a very loaded. I'm just telling you, I'm not going to respond in any fashion. It doesn't mean a thing.
Okay. So let the record show that Mr. Butler and Hart, and I think Mr. Phelps voted in affirmative.
Your time is up. Thank you, Ms. Scovanner. Ms. Enda.
My name is Lauren Enda, 5073 Bristol Court. In 2017, Loveland faced a controversial issue similar to today's proposed garage when the mayor at the time wanted to repurpose City Hall. Neil Ori addressed council multiple times on that issue. In one speech, he commented that it's, quote, important for open and honest dialogue to happen at all times and every person's voice be heard and acknowledged, end quote. I agree. For that purpose, I sent 6 questions about the proposed garage to council members. 4 members responded, and I thank Misters Ping, Butler, Bateman, and Hart. You guys are awesome. My questions and their answers will be shared on Loveland magazine, and which will hopefully encourage more conversation about this momentous decision. Loveland does need answers about the garage, and I have been looking. I even read the 436-page grant application to the Economic Development Administration, and that was not easy. During that research, I found no data-driven reason to build the garage, none. In the absence of verifiable data explaining why council wants to build it, I will again quote Mr. Ori. What is the hidden agenda? I worked in the U.S. intelligence community for almost 30 years. In my career, I took part in various government projects, but I have never witnessed so much government money being thrown at a project with so little data and with so little oversight. A referendum and the ensuing debate and dialogue it would encourage would offer some level of oversight, since council would then need to demonstrate why they prioritize the garage over other pressing problems in Loveland. If you care about Loveland's unique ambiance, you will oppose this garage. The garage will deteriorate the charm of Loveland. The footprint of it approximates the same square footage of the playing area of a football field, and that doesn't include the drives into and out of the garage. That's huge. Mr. Ori again, quote, I would like to see the city maintain the charm and character that makes this place so wonderful to live in and for families to be raised, end quote. If you care about the environment just a little bit, you will oppose this garage. The grant application stated that, quote, no endangered species have been identified, end quote, and that, quote, no direct impacts from the proposed project activities have been identified, end quote. Neither of these statements are factual because neither issue has been studied. In addition, very mature trees will be ripped out of our downtown to pour concrete. Last year, Loveland was designated a tree city by the Arbor Day Foundation. Since then, acres of forest at Blossom Hill were destroyed for a controversial housing project. And now, Loveland is sanctioning more tree destruction. When will it end? Is Loveland a tree city in name only? If you care about solving problems in a thoughtful, data-driven way, you will oppose this garage. Loveland needs to study this issue, really study this issue. Here's how. Number 1, create a parking committee and choose people with diverse opinions. 2, commission a parking survey and a traffic study. 3, ensure environmental concerns have been addressed with an impact study. 4, analyze the financial impact of downtown business on Loveland's overall operations. Would a garage change that? And what would be our return on investment? Number 5, task the parking committee to develop a variety of options to address any parking shortfalls. Number 6, share that information with residents before decisions are made. Number 7, include this data and resident input in a long-range, all-encompassing plan to tackle parking and traffic for good. Number 8, finally, if the council decides the parking garage is still the answer, put it on a referendum and let the residents decide. This garage will redefine what Loveland is and what it is not. It deserves closer attention. In closing, Neil Ori once again, quote, it is time to make sure that citizens and the council do what is best for the city of Loveland, end quote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scovanner?
If I could, Mayor.
Yes.
Obviously, Ms. Enda has done a lot of research and careful analysis and assessment. Over the last couple of weeks, there have also been various social media platforms and so forth, supporters of the garage articulating and advocating for why it is a good solution to the parking situation. And I think what this shows, and I've talked to several of you independently about this, is that there's strong feelings on both sides of the issue, which lends itself, and I know now is not the time. We've got time to consider this before we get to that point, but it lends itself to the possibility of the public telling us what they want. Do they want a garage? Do they not want a garage? And then letting council and the city staff abiding by that decision. With strong feelings on both sides, it's a way, frankly, to heal the community. So I urge my colleagues at the right time to thoughtfully entertain that prospect.
I think we've been saying that for months. That's
referendum.
exactly what we're, not a now that's funny, because
Well-
you've said in the past that is absolutely not the way to go.
Well, that might have been 2 years ago,
Right.
and a lot has changed since then.
All right,
So-
Mr. Scovanner. Please don't speak out during a meeting now, sir.
At the last council meeting, the Loveland Avenue traffic study from December 2019 was in the agenda packet. That study by Tech Engineering I found was very interesting. It was trying to evaluate the conflict points between vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles and review the intersection efficiency along Loveland Avenue. The city manager, Dave Kennedy, provided a memorandum in consultation with our city engineer highlighting the history of changes over the years. A couple of points stood out in that memorandum. While discussing the Cox Trailside parking area, the city manager stated its location also helped to distribute traffic flow for downtown patrons and the bike trail users away from the northernmost populous area of the district. And discussing the East Loveland Avenue sidewalk and parking lot expansion of 2016, he wrote, "This parking lot provides overflow parking for the downtown during special events, again, spreading out parking." Those are the only two discussions in that memorandum about parking. Both times, the advantage of spreading out parking is highlighted. But now the council is considering concentrating parking with the parking garage in the midst of the historic downtown Loveland. Just the opposite of the memorandum recommendations made just 2 weeks ago by our professional staff and echoed by our engineer, who's the trained staff person on this matter. Just the people that Mr. Bateman said we should be listening to. I want to remind you that these are the two most knowledgeable and trained people in Loveland government that actually wrote that we should be spreading out parking, not concentrating it. Turning to the actual traffic study, 7 ideas were explored and discussed. Unfortunately, the study acknowledged that most of these ideas provide minor or probably no actual help. It's an all too common bureaucratic response to a problem, something we've all too frequently seen at all levels of government. Do something for the sake of being able to say, we tried, but it just didn't work. The only real suggestion to help the problem was number 7, rerouting the Little Miami Scenic Trail away from the Loveland Avenue crossing. To quote the study, quote, "The trail crossing of Loveland Avenue can be relocated to provide a safer movement that has little impact on vehicular traffic. The trail could run along Carl Brown Way, connecting through Nisbet Park to the north and near Loveland Canoe and Kayak to the south, so that the trail is still adjacent to the downtown area to encourage shopping and eating. With running along Carl Brown Way, the trail would cross an existing signalized intersection that provides a more familiar crossing than a mid-block unsignalized intersection." Now, I haven't talked to Mr. Butler, but that's exactly what he says he's heard from other people. The study noted several issues with the rerouting, cost being a major concern because of the need for right-of-way acquisition. But the city already owns Nisbet Park, and Carl Brown is already a public road, so there would be little acquisition costs in that. The most significant issue would be likely getting other agencies to agree. But this is the time to make the effort to make real change. While we're looking at redoing Nisbet Park, too often we hear, it can't be done, it's too hard. Doing the hard things to improve the quality of life of the citizens is what government should do. Look at real solutions, not just signage. Signage can be part of the solution, but it's only a small part. There are less expensive alternative ideas to solve traffic congestion and parking needs that need to be explored. A holistic solution might include extending Harrison Avenue to 48, adding parking to the Loveland-owned grass area, the grass field adjacent to the nature preserve parking area, and then purchasing a limited right-of-way acquisition of a walkway from there to Harrison Avenue at Clayworks. It'd be about 200 feet long, make it about 8 feet wide. That would be certainly a lot cheaper than a parking garage. On a final note, and so I think we need a committee to study traffic congestion, and I would be happy to serve on such a committee. Now, on a somewhat unrelated matter, I predicted that Drees would, and they have already submitted a request to change the zoning for the Grail property. This city and this council owes no duty to Drees to ultimately approve any zoning change. Notwithstanding that, I'll make another prediction. Someone on council will, probably during an executive session, suggest that if the zoning change is not approved, Drees will sue the city. They might. But speaking as an attorney, to succeed in a suit, Drees will have to prove real damages, not just speculative damages. In this, they will be unsuccessful. Do not ignore the citizens. Do not change the zoning. Maintain the 1 acre requirement for the Grail property. And as I said before, I do not oppose development. In fact, I think the council this evening should vote yes on the Chestnut Street property brownfield remediation grant application so we can hopefully develop that property. Thank you.
Hello, I am Sherry Hamlin, 118 Canine Drive in Loveland. Well, annexation of the Grail property has finally come to a vote at the last city council meeting, and Loveland now has almost an additional 100 acres of property added to our boundaries. To be clear, I am absolutely in favor of this annexation. It is my belief that this property will be developed regardless of whether or not it's in the city limits. I absolutely agree that to control our own destiny, we need a seat at the table. Will the development happen to us or with us? And after the last city council meeting, we can now say it will happen with us. As Mr. Bateman mentioned in the last council meeting, annexation is a privilege that not many communities have, and we are fortunate. Having said all this, it is no secret that the annexation has its opponents. One thing we have in common is the desire to not make this property cram-packed, full of housing that adds to our already stressed parking and traffic problem. We have an opportunity here to be visionary and creative and not settle for a cookie-cutter, run-of-the-mill neighborhood. Just up the street in Warren County, there is a farm-to-table community. It's a community that centers around livestock and crops that feed the community, stock a seasonal farmers market, and bring the community together through events like cooking classes and a community dinner night. Maybe a biking community. I can imagine a bike trail that winds around and through the community, which of course would tie in nicely with what Loveland is already known for. Maybe even a bike sales and repair shop on the property. And for the biking and nature enthusiasts, how convenient that they'd be right next door to Claremont County Parkland. And perhaps long-term, the biking trail would come downtown and connect to the existing bike trail. Maybe an eco-village where housing materials are recycled, sustainable, sourced locally, and the energy is 100% renewable. There are greenhouses on the property where the community grows their own food. It is a growing trend across the globe. How cool would it be for people to Google this radical new concept and find Loveland? Maybe some mixed use, a couple of restaurants and entertainment spots that would drive traffic out to the outskirts of town instead of to the heart of it. Perhaps a quaint inn. The 2019 Downtown Strategic Plan identifies the lack of hospitality in Loveland, so this would tie in nicely to that plan. The possibilities are endless. Besides the built-in benefits that this community could bring, there is a secondary benefit. I, for one, do not want to hear "I told you so" from the opponents of this annexation, and I can't imagine that you do either. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is review and approval of the minutes from the January 11th, 2022 meeting. Are there any corrections, changes to those minutes? Someone make a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
Following Ed's presentation, I did not include a memo because I hit you last time and through a presentation. This memorandum would authorize the submission of the grant application, which is due at the end of the month, for the systemic improvements to the traffic signals that Ed discussed. We've done very well with these safety programs. They're all under the ODOT safety umbrella, so the city's done pretty well. I feel like this project could be funded. The city would likely cover some of the costs for the design. Obviously, a project like this, we would secure the services of TEC to put it out to bid and so on and so forth. They would want to tweak some of the timing to make sure that all the timing is in place. We've obviously worked with Chief Ray and LPD in terms of enforcement, but this resolution presented to you would be included with the application if it is approved and then executed.
All right, any questions, comments? Mr. Butler?
Dave, if we proceed with the grant application, could we simultaneously still study the possibility of the bypass concept and see how it could work, maybe in tandem even?
I think, as Ed said, there's quite a bit of funding for bike trail studies through ODOT and through OKI. To do it right, we would want to reach out to a consultant to figure out how it would be done. When it was presented to me back when I got here in 2014 by Gus Schmitzmiller is the head of bike trails for the Ohio Department of Transportation, and just quite frankly a wonderful man. His vision of a bypass actually started way back at Lyons, worked its way down along the river, and worked its way back, knowing that at certain times of the year it wouldn't be in use. But the goal of that simply is bikers that have no intentions of patronizing local businesses way back at the Lyons would work their way down along the edge, come up past Mark somewhere along the Linda Cox lot in that area. That, of course, would take the bike trails are very fundable from a grant standpoint, and they're very fundable from a study standpoint. I'm certainly willing to look into, reach out to OKI and find out what monies they have for studies. They lean towards communities such as Loveland because Loveland is established. I'm often asked to be on Zoom meetings and stuff about bike trails only for one reason, because they want me to talk about the pros and cons for an established community. I have nothing to do with it. I'm sort of the throw-in. So there is money available for that, and I could certainly look into it, because to do it right, you're talking about someone like an Ed, I would guess. Ed teaming up with an environmental type of firm. Someone you would have to work with. I'm sorry.
Okay. I would say I support the grant application, but I think we can also walk and chew gum same time, and perhaps review whether, again, as a tandem concept, this could really be a resolution to issues there. If you bypass a lot of the serious cyclists who really don't want to go through downtown Loveland and are annoyed by the people on the bike path and so forth. I know these people. That's how they are. They would love to go, and not have to go through the busy part of downtown because they're out for their 50 to 60 mile ride. So I think it's worth pursuing. And if there's funding available for that kind of study too, that's all the better. And I know it's not on the agenda today, but just planting the seed.
All right, any other comments? Mr. Bateman?
Just to sort of follow along that same line of thinking as what Mr. Butler was saying, and also I think some of our open forum speakers, the idea of a bypass as an alternate or solution to the bike trail crossing is certainly an interesting solution when it comes to addressing bicycle traffic. But I know, and I'm not suggesting that we have the data of somebody doing a counter as people cross the bike trail crossing, but certainly it seems to me to be more of a pedestrian issue relative to establishment of a right-of-way. And so I think that's what this grant application really hammers home, is this physical mechanism to establish right-of-way for pedestrians and vehicles at that intersection. So I certainly am also in favor of, as Mr. Butler said, walking and chewing gum at the same time in terms of evaluating what creating bike lanes might look like around Carl Brown and Broadway, or 48 and Lions, some cones, to try to create a small little loop for those bicyclists that are looking to avoid the summer crowds as they walk down the bike trail across all of our businesses in District Park, and that's quite a main thoroughfare. It's sort of like the Midwestern equivalent of a boardwalk, in terms of what we've got there. So I do think that that is interesting, but I don't think that it's absent what this grant application presents. I don't think that's going to be the solution. I think we need to have that establishment of right-of-way, because as our speaker mentioned, what we really have here is an established social and community norm that I would maybe classify as being over-courteous. Everybody sits there at that intersection and says, no, oh, you go, no, you go. And so you've got this situation where nobody really knows who's supposed to go first, whether you're turning as a car on the railroad, turning out of the railroad onto West Loveland, crossing the bike trail. So something that can be clearly visible and allows everybody the indication of these are the new rules. This is who gets to go first. This is when you get to go. Is something that really addresses the issue. Of course, we have to look into and I really rely on the expertise of Chief Ray and all of the traffic signaling and the synchronization that's going to have to take place on the two intersections opposite this main artery, so that it doesn't become overcomplicated. Certainly we're going to have to address the sweet spot, but I apologize if it's a long-winded way of saying yes, I think we can do both. I think the streetscape plan, which we're putting forward to address some of this stuff, could also help with pedestrians in terms of going around that secondary loop. But certainly this is a great, this is probably the largest single proposal to address what is everyone's obviously evident, the big log jam on Loveland Avenue, the bike trail crossing. So certainly I'm supporting this grant application.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comment? Mr. Hart?
I'm going to do a much shorter winded version of what Mr. Bateman just said.
That'd be great.
Oh, I appreciate what he just said. I agree with what Mr. Butler said in terms of cyclists and going around town, and how that does seem to be something we maybe should look at. But I do, in what Mr. Bateman was saying, I find to be, as an anecdotal evidence, and what I've seen just downtown, it's the pedestrian crossing, not the bicyclists that are causing the major backup there. And I would think that something needs to be done at that intersection, just from a right-of-way standpoint.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Ping?
Just to be clear, the resolution that's being presented is for an application for a grant. There's no requirement that we accept the grant, spend the money, do this. So if we change direction, we could do that, correct?
Mr. Canine?
Yes. We traditionally, typically, tread lightly on that because we certainly don't want to give the impression that we're submitting and walking away. But yes, there's no real commitment. My main point that I wanted was that I wanted to make sure everyone knew that it's more than the traffic signals that the vehicles are facing on West Loveland and that the pedestrians and the bicycles are facing. I just wanted everyone to know about that there had to be something on Railroad too. So yes, there's really no commitment with any project.
Anyone else? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the submission of Ohio Department of Transportation Highway Safety Program systemic, grant application for the Loveland Bike Path Safety Project.
Any comment on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Resolution 11 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
So, as a lot of people know, the city owns the Chestnut Street property, which is 3 parcels that make 8.33 acres of land. The property had largely been a sand and gravel quarry up to 1932. The city purchased it from a Mr. Nisbet. It does not appear to be related to the Nisbet Park. I checked that. Thanks, Todd, because I almost called to ask you. But in 1979, during that period of time, there's been uncontrolled dumping throughout that property. That uncontrolled dumping and other items basically has caused environmental issues that has made the property largely undevelopable. Meanwhile, the property has incredible potential. 8 acres fronting a railroad. First and foremost, I always think that everyone needs to know, whenever we talk about the development of Chestnut, this has nothing to do with residential. This will always be commercial or light industrial development. So we have been, over the years of, I would anticipate probably 6-7 city managers. We've done 8 different studies, phase 1s, phase 2s, updates to those phase 1s, phase 2s. Throughout that process, we fortunately have always kept in touch with the Ohio EPA. They actually funded some of the studies. At the end of the day, we're really good at knowing what's wrong with the property. We've never really been good at figuring out how to remediate the property. And largely, we didn't want to know because we always knew we could never afford that kind of endeavor. Well, we had caught wind that there was going to be funding come available through the state of Ohio, the Ohio Department of Development, called brownfield remediation. Brownfield remediation funding is simply remediate environmental issues which hinder economic viability. That's the Chestnut Street property. And they know about the Chestnut Street property. So it is a prime piece of property. The city is currently trying to even expand its frontage onto Loveland Madeira Road as we speak. So with that came the largest single opportunity the city's ever faced, I would say, since they've owned it in 1979, to actually take a step forward to remediate this project. From the time that the city got the grant in December 14th, a notification of the applications, to the turnaround of January 31st, that's as short of a turnaround time that you're going to find for a grant application. And not that anyone cares, but I've been writing grant applications since 1989. I've never seen something with such a quick turnaround. I secured the services of Patriot Engineering. They're environmental engineers, and this is what they do. The first 2 weeks was doing nothing but paging through a stack of studies to figure out exactly what they have and what we deal with. Former city manager Tom Carroll had installed water monitor wells down on the property. Those monitor wells are still active. The Patriot Engineering went on to there to evaluate the water flow and many other items that are involved, including obviously a myriad of dumping, mirrors. We don't have to go in a lot of details, but so as the application comes due, which is very, very soon, and as I've met with Patriot Engineering, they're concerned about being able to get a real ironclad price on what it's going to cost to remediate. But knowing that there's $350 million available, this property has been on the radar of the Ohio EPA for some time, that we felt that we had a really good potential. My direction to them was to do a worst-case scenario cost estimate. That cost estimate, which is included in the application, is $4,431,000. Okay, what are the two big items? The two big items are the water table remediation. We have no idea the total worst-case scenario. The wetland that was listed on there, though we don't know if it still exists. If it exists, what size, what quantity of it. Wetlands are very unique. All cities can remove wetlands, but they must recreate one. How you recreate one is based upon the size and the scope of what you have. When I say recreate, we're not going out somewhere and digging that. We put money into a bank, into a remediation bank for wetlands, which is used by people all over. We don't know the extent of it. Many communities. I would also point out that I do feel that the turnaround time actually works in the city's favor, because years and years of studies, monitoring wells, us bringing on an engineering firm so quickly, I think we may be going against some communities who may not simply be able to put together an application. So if the property is remediated, so the city's, part of what I'm putting in front of you is not just authorization to submit it, but what I'm also putting in front of you is commitment of 25%. I didn't put a dollar amount because we don't know exactly what that dollar amount would be. Fast forward to the property is remediated, full force with what they call an NFA, no further action. I believe it was Councilmember Ping asked me an interesting question today about just if I was to guess what the value of the property would be if it was completely cleaned. Well, I just used the Oasis property as a potential. Smaller property, actually smaller working area, given the large contours on the property. Property sold for $850,000 back 3 or 4 years ago. I'm not saying that is what we're going to be worth, but I will also point out that the Oasis property doesn't front a railroad. Railroad spurs are very possible and could entice a nice type of light industrial use. That's jobs and income tax for the city. The other part about this, which I think is ultra important, is the ripple effect it could have on the Loveland Madeira Road corridor. A corridor that was so important that it's pretty much the premier portion of the city's master development plan. I think that is a ripple effect. We envision someday creating an intersection at Valley View, tiffing this particular piece of property to create that intersection, new traffic straighten out Valley View, and so on and so forth. So it is a risk, as is anything is a risk. When does the city punt if we are funded? City could punt at any point in time. I will tell you that if the city gets awarded funding and we simply are notified that the city has funding, the value of the property just went up exponentially. If we simply stopped right there. And then it goes up and up as the property is remediated more and more. So I hope I touched on all the different parts. I didn't really want to go into too much detail about what was on there and all the different studies that we've done. But as you see from the cost estimate on package page 33, the largest money is mostly in the wetland mitigation. And you'll notice, if needed, the groundwater remediation. There has to be new wells, types of chemicals pumped in. I find it interesting, if you look at that picture that I included on package page 33, that's the plume, as they would call it. I'm not an environmentalist, but you do know you can tell which way it's heading. It's heading to the Little Miami River. So obviously it's not moving fast, but this is an environmental thing, environmental activity that the city will take, not only for the benefit of a city-owned property, but it's also for the benefit of the environment. So that's as much of an environment hat as I can put on. But I think it's an important project. It is a risk. We would not expend this money in 2022. It would be over multiple, not multiple, it would be over 22 and 2023 periods. We may pass it off. We are always still responsible. I believe that's the meat of it, Mayor. I didn't want to go into bore everybody.
All right. Any comments, questions?
I just want to reiterate that
Turn your
this,
thing on.
I just want to reiterate that this is not for housing. This would be for some form of commercial development.
Yes, sir. The levels of environmental clearance to reach for residential is a level that we've never once ever tried to attempt. And quite frankly, this grant is not for us putting in residential. The whole scope of it is to create jobs.
And I'd also like to reiterate rhetorically, I'm not asking a specific question, that once we have that NFA designation, we have, what is it, 8 acres?
8.3.
8.3 acres of prime commercial real estate with a railroad connection right in the heart of Loveland. I think this is a great opportunity. I think any money we spend now will come back to us multifold down the road. I am fully in support of it.
Any other comments or questions? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I, realize over the years when we've talked about the Chestnut Street property and developing it, I always sort of adopted the position that it would be good for somebody who purchased it or wanted to develop it to absorb the cost of remediation. And I know over the years we've had interested parties, but Dave, maybe you can talk a little bit about when they learn and are aware of the environmental problem, where those discussions have gone.
Those discussions on the environmental studies came so active, I ended up putting them all in Dropbox because they were easier to distribute to everyone so they could see them. Most people immediately turned away. We had a company who made a food product, sort of a fun food product. I won't go into a lot of detail. And from another country, and who was interested in the property, certainly liked the ability to put a spur in. Most things, as Tom will tell you, starts in Eva's office and sort of works its way around. By the time the environmental issues came, we never actually heard from him. When it came to value of the property, I've always felt that if there was ever someone who truly had the resources, the remediation plan intact, all the wherewithal to clean that property up, that the city would have likely sold it for $1. I simply never thought it had any value given all that we know. And as you spoke, Vice Mayor, we are required to tell everybody everything that we have. For all the studies are in my office or now consolidated.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, in hindsight, if any current member of this council could go back in time to 1979, we would likely whisper to our predecessors, vote no on this property. It's presented environmental and other problems to the city since its purchase. And for over 40 years, unfortunately, various councils were remiss in their managing and addressing the problems with the Chestnut Street property to convert it to a productive use. John and I have served on the Comprehensive Plan Committee for almost 2 years now, and we've all noted that the property is unfortunately currently an anchor on the development and refurbishment of Loveland, Madeira. It's also a nuisance and probably environmental risk, and we owe it to our citizens to find a solution to the problem. We have the opportunity to dig into the Chestnut property literally and figuratively, but as Dave noted, it will not be cheap. In the past few years, we have approved major expenditures in infrastructure improvements, a multi-million-dollar improvement to the safety center, a new public works garage, and likely sometime in this term we'll be considering how to fund a $3 million plus fire station. And I note at the last Finance Committee, a lot of time and discussion was focused on the significant financial needs of maintaining our water system. And my understanding is that city staff is preparing an assessment of that system. This too will cost taxpayer dollars. To paraphrase Everett Dirksen, $1 million here and $1 million there, and pretty soon you're talking real money. So as a council, we need to carefully weigh what are the needs of taxpayer spending and what are the wants. In my view, the potential to remediate the Chestnut Street property falls into the category of needs, given its present state, its impact on Loveland Madeira, and the fact that unfortunately it is a wasting asset for the city's taxpayers. In the very near future, our council will likely consider even more expensive capital expenditures, which, in my view, fall in the category of wants. And I urge my fellow council members to be prudent and careful in our spending of taxpayer dollars and decline to expend millions for projects which are wants, which do not demonstrate a return to our citizens, especially when those projects could be provided by private investment. I urge my colleagues to focus on the core function of city government: paving roads, providing fire and police protection, cleaning up environmental hazards, and providing a safe and functioning water system. Finally, as Dave noted, a lot of the problems with this property is attributable to dumping of companies and other parties. And at some point, I would ask our council to consider requesting the city solicitor to determine whether there's any potential insurance coverage for any matching funds which we as a city expend for remediating this property, and also to determine whether there's a potential for indemnification from private entities who may have contributed to the environmental issues on this property. That said, I also support the grant application, and I hope that we achieve it. Thank you.
Mr. Hart?
I can't actually think of a better lead-in than what Mr. Ballard just gave right there. I think that we do need to be prudent with our tax dollars and how we're spending our resident community money. I can't think of a better way to spend it than on something that would be so environmentally impactful as to clean up the waste on that property, to solve a blighted property, as Mr. Kennedy mentioned, and also to potentially provide development on what we considered during our master planning discussions, almost a linchpin of that Loveland Madeira corridor. So the successful application of this grant would be a huge coup for the city in so many different ways, and I can't think of a more responsible way to spend the tax dollars on this city.
Anyone else? Mr. Ping?
I just wanted to add on to what everyone else has said. When I first saw these numbers, it's a big number, and so immediately my mind went to where does the money come from, and the reason why I asked Mr. Kennedy the question about the value of the property after cleaned up is that, and I think he has demonstrated very well, while we would be spending money up front to make this happen, there is significant potential for this property to develop more than that coming back to us. The fact that this has sat for 40 years waiting on a developer to come along who's willing to spend the money to remediate it demonstrates that it takes more than that. To me, this is a perfect example of what government is supposed to do, which is take the collective community dollars, put it together, and make something happen that can't be done on an individual basis. So it seems like this is as close as you get to a no-brainer to me in terms of, once you hear the whole story, understanding that we're basically making a little loan until we can sell the property and then make this all happen. So I think it's a great thing, and appreciate the effort that's been put into it.
Thank you. Any other comments? You can read the resolution.
Resolution supporting the submission of an Ohio Brownfield Remediation Program grant application for the remediation of the Chestnut Street property and committing a local match.
Any comment on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Resolution 12 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
One of City's Council's goals was, recent goals was embedded in, was effective government through open multimodal communications with our residential and business communities, ensuring active participation from our citizenry. I think the city's taken a tremendous amount, put a lot of work into that particular city council goal, not least of which was creating and filling the position of marketing communications manager, which is filled by Krista Rose. She has certainly put the city out there in a much better light in terms of social media. One of the things that Mayor Bailey and I've been talking about for some time was the ability to expand that through LED signage, which is becoming obviously very popular amongst just even our neighboring communities. We talked about the 3 different locations that we would like to work at, and one of the first ones we wanted to touch is there on Loveland Madeira Road by Public Works Building. I secured some quotes from secured quotes, one for the budget and then another one as required before I bring it to council. I include the pictures involved in this, the sign, which is the state-of-the-art brand. Watchfire is the state-of-the-art brand in LED, and these are actually called message centers. It would be a 3-foot by 9-foot full color LED message center tied through software to Krista's desk. I gave you some samples. I was trying to be funny maybe a little bit, but that was only just myriad of items that we would be able to do, from public hearings to notifications of community events, to Riverside Drive is closed because the river's flooding, to myriad events of items that we would be able to communicate to our residents at a touch of a button and in a very professional manner, all through software. I think this is a great step, not just because our neighbors are doing it, but because the internet, there's more avenues to reach out to our residency than simply the internet and social media items. So this is an item, as I said in the memo, don't get me wrong, it'll give the appearance that it's mounted onto the ornamental fencing. There is actually steel beams that will come through and be mounted behind it. We'll replace that sign. I just typically don't use an outside company for any of our Loveland sign. We have another company we use that matches the colors. So that's why this is simply for the LED sign, all the mounting, all the hanging, all the electrical programming, teaching Krista how to run the software, and so on and so forth.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Butler?
Dave, would we use the existing foundation, those pillars that are shown on page 38?
No, we would be, I didn't show you the picture where they're coming through because it came with this silly heart that looked like it was welcome to Reno type of thing. And I didn't want anyone to think that we were doing that. But if you could imagine L shapes behind that area right there would be 2 independent concrete foundations, and L beams will come up and then angle in and mount to the back. They'll be narrow enough that they'll go through the fencing, and it really truly will give the impression that that's what's holding it, but that's not what's holding it. There's a whole separate foundation that's going in.
Okay. And how about that stone kind of planter that's surrounding the sign? That would stay there?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with the Atlantic Sign Company for the purchase and installation of an LED message center.
Any comment on the legislation? Mr. Phelps?
Dave, just in terms of, I assume this would be fully insured under our policy from theft or vandalism?
Yep. As soon as it goes up, Tom deals with all of our public and property insurance. He would notify them with all the items that would be added on. The city would see a slight increase. Yeah, we're pretty good at getting things covered immediately. It comes with a few warranties too.
You read the resolution. All right, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Resolution 13 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
Well, I'm sorry the students left, but we've had the fortune to work with a group of students from the high school who had to leave in an effort to creating the city's first dog park.
Can I name them?
Yes.
Nicole Dearling, Alex Salatin, and Macy Klosterman.
I'm talking out with a wheel, traveling all around to different dog parks, coming up with all of our measurements, energy at a whole different level. I want to thank Councilmember Hart for bringing him into the scene. Also, Mike Meldon had a lot to do with coming up with this idea. It was also presented to the rec board and supported by the rec board, and of course included in the budget based on actually the kids' measurements and us being able to get some quotes. Kiwanis Park, I think one of the, so not to bore everyone, but it is an ideal location because it is maintained by the city, it's owned by the city. A large portion of the fence is existing and in mint quality. The city would install 1,132 feet of fencing along the area that runs parallel, ties back in. It would create slightly over a 2-acre dog park. It would include an unleashing area. At a later date, we will be adding a small dog area, so the unleashing area will actually have 2 doors. The reason being is that one of those doors will be the small dog area. We are looking at some other amenities. There's a separate, not included in this, is a pretty large detention basin at the lowest point of this property. That has to be handled separately and done so that it doesn't create drainage issues, but it has to be protected so the dogs don't get hurt. This is going to be something we'll be adding amenities to. We're looking at a groundbreaking, a ceremony that the kids are going to help put together in May. I think part of the neat part of this is and it hopefully advertised on a brand new LED sign. The kids have got a lot of plans, food trucks, some lady they know that makes gourmet dog treats. Of course, Cruz would be there, maybe even Mac will show up. But the neat part about it is there's quite a bit of parking, and I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to come to it, dog lovers like the person to my left and others around here, that are going to say, I had no idea this was up here. And I think you're going to see the use of that park go up, which is good. It's well maintained. And to have a dog park up there and have one of 2 acres in size, I think every time John and I were up there with Mike Meldon and the students, someone was throwing a ball to a dog. It's like already a dog park. It just doesn't know it yet. So I think this is a great idea. We got secured 4 quotes. We are not going with the self-closing system. I'm trying to preserve as much money as possible. The self-closing system to us doesn't seem necessary. Close the dog. You can certainly close the fence when you go in. We can use that $725 for some other items. We have some signage we want to do, and the kids have a whole picture show of the different things. So our low bid came from the fence company down on Kemper Road, $34,900. That is $3,100 under our budget of $38,000. We plan on using those funds, but that will be within my spending limits, so we'll not have to come back to City Council. Grand opening, we are looking at in early May, and the fence company feels like we can meet that.
Any questions or comments, Mr. Butler?
Dave, I think it's a great idea. Does the dog park displace any ball diamond activity or anything like that? No. Okay.
Nope, it's all on the back of it. And no, we actually, I believe, John, you spoke with Knothole people, and they were no problem whatsoever.
Yeah, spoke with a couple of the teams that use it up there, but Mr. Meldon was talking about putting a wildflower wall behind it. To separate the dogs so they wouldn't see the kids in the outfield and stuff, and cut down that. So yeah, they were all for it and thought it'd be a good thing.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, Vice Mayor.
Just, as was the case with the LED light, this is a project that was budgeted for in the 2022 budget, correct?
Yeah, you approved $28,000 on December 14th when you approved the budget. What did I say?
28.
I'm sorry. You approved 38.
All right, read the resolution, please. Oh, Mr. Bateman?
Thanks. I just had this is like a procedural question, I suppose, but there will be some signage, I would assume, in terms of explaining the rules of best practices at the dog park, and like little bags for picking up dog waste, all of the amenities that dog park is going to have. This will have.
Yes, sir. I plan on spending every penny of the 3,100. The kids have a whole tour. We actually found something on the internet, Dog Parks for Dummies type of thing, which really gave you some interesting ideas about dog safety and the signage, and obviously the city's liability.
Okay. You good? Okay. Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with the fence company for installation of fence for a dog park in Kiwanis Park.
Any comment on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Resolution 14 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy.
Included also in the February, on the 2022 budget and capital improvement program passed by council on December 14th was $60,000 for the a new playset in Phillips Park. I think it goes without saying, and maybe not with enough notoriety, but the city has spent a significant amount of money on their park system. Included in that effort is a complete and total renovation, replacement of all of its playsets. The city has replaced the playset Mccoy, Nisbet, and Kiwanis. 2 of those were done with park grant funding. All of those were A, unsafe, and B, not handicap accessible. Following an assessment of what we had left, which was Phillips, Lever, Boyke, and the 2 tot lots, it was pretty much no-brainers because Phillips was so bad that it had to be taken out last summer. So Phillips was picked and earmarked. That would not have been an area that would have been easy to fund through grants. So the city budgeted. Typically when we do those, we feel like we're using the city's impact funding as we get road and rec funding for each new house that comes into the city. So with $60,000, we went through the program, received some designs, wanted to stay within the footprint. We always work with the 5 to 12 age group. Not trying to be against the younger kids, but they just don't get used like the 5 to 12 age group does. And so that all of our play sets is that. Lever is in good shape, Boyke is in good shape, and City Council authorized me to submit an application for replacement of the 2 tot lots, which we did. It may get funded and replaced. So the total price, and colors were modified slightly by the Parks and Rec Committee, is $56,127 through Sourcewell. They are Sourcewell is a consortium of cities throughout nationwide. They use the bargaining power, and then we obviously are saving get significant money. Remember that cost includes full installation, all ADA accessible, all of the surface area, which is the mulchy, the type of mulch they use, and the full concrete border around it.
Any comments or questions? All right, read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Playground Equipment Services for the purchase and installation of a new playset at Phillips Park.
Any question, comment on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Resolution 15 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. In January of 2021, the City Council approved a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter an agreement to purchase Excella Civic Platform, which includes planning, building and zoning, property maintenance, and business licensing as modules as a total software package. Throughout 2021, we have, it's been pretty slow but consistent, created and kind of manufactured that software to cater to the city's needs. Very, very specific things such as the GIS, overlapping into 3 different counties, the migration to MS Outlook, and then a task manager that will retrieve our documents, allow us to modify our documents, and then also probably the greatest importance is the user experience from beginning at the staff level to the end user with the applicant or customer, client, what have you. So with that, the software also includes an app. So most of the applications, can be converted. Well, all of the applications can be converted to digital formats. But should, heaven forbid, something else happen with, a COVID, Omicron variant, whatever, something else happens, this software will allow us to be completely independent of in-person communication and will not have any interruption whatsoever in the level of service. So what's before you now is a resolution authorizing the licensure of 6 licenses for Building and Zoning Division staff. As you will note in the memo, Section 111507K requires council approval for any provision of goods or services over $15,000. The city's 2022 operating and capital improvements budget allocated $16,686 for the licensure of those 6 users, and then the procurement of those licenses will come out of the IT maintenance services line item of the general fund. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Blair.
Is it working?
We won't launch it, and it's actually not completed. That's why we're bringing it to you now. It won't actually launch until the end of February, 1st of March.
So we bought a license for a year's worth of this gizmo.
Oh, yes.
And we're not using it yet?
We are not using it yet. The licensure, how the program worked is the licensure before, so we have 2 different companies. One is Excella, that's the actual program, and then Avocet is the one that that develops it and creates it. So the city, as part of the contract agreement, had to purchase a license for the creation of it, and that's the business model of the industry, which I argued up and down, and we almost went away from it because of that. But all the other models, such as Gov Deals that we looked at before, operate under the same model. It is. I agree with you. It is very frustrating.
Any other comments, Mr. Butler?
So Tom, we purchased, following up on Mr. Blair, we purchased the license in 2021, and throughout 2021, we've been developing it, basically, to suit our purposes, to suit our needs.
Yes, correct.
And throughout 2021, we did not need those 6 seats, but now we're purchasing 6 seats. Is that basically what it comes down to?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, when we approved the licensure in 2021, it included the creation, the development of the software, and the necessary licensures to do that.
Okay.
That is correct.
So now for us to use it and have 6 people in the building department primarily using it, we have to purchase these seats.
Correct.
Okay.
And the unfortunate thing of it is it's an annual subscription.
I was just about to ask you.
So
we're going to have to do this every year?
Mm-hmm. Yep, each year. And that is the industry standard. I believe we do the same with our Minute Track software, unless I'm mistaken, as well as a lot of our Adobe software. Unfortunately, it's just an industry.
But we're using those.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Anyone else? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to issue payment to Excella Inc. for the annual license, support, and maintenance of the city's building and zoning software.
Any comment on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
No.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Resolution 16 is adopted by a vote of 6-1.
Mr. Medler.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. At the last council meeting, a resolution was passed declaring the necessity for an additional tax levy for fire protection and emergency medical services. The resolution directed staff to coordinate with Hamilton County to obtain a certificate of estimated property tax revenue to be produced from a levy of 1.75 mils. The tax valuation provided by the county is $415,793,160, which is estimated to provide $727,638 per year. These figures are within 2% of the estimates that we have been working with since the summer. Because the figures we received were so close to the estimates, we feel that 1.75 mils will be sufficient to provide funding for at least 5 years and hopefully more. The legislation before you this evening will place the tax levy on the May 3rd, 2022 ballot, where it will be decided on by the voters of the entire city, including Hamilton, Claremont, and Warren counties. If approved, that will be for tax year 22, which will be collected starting in 23.
Thank you, Mr. Medler. Any questions or comments? Mr. Blair?
2%, within 2% high or 2% low?
Our estimate during the summer was lower than the money, we got. So we'd actually be getting about 13,000 more than the estimate.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, I'm sure none of us are fans necessarily of asking the citizens to pay more in terms of tax dollars, but as noted by Mr. Hart at the last council meeting, the fire department has done an excellent job of extending the last levy. At some point, as a council member, I'm deferring to the professional expertise of our fire department of assessing what our needs are in terms of funding that fire department. And, they've done an excellent job. They're very highly rated. And, I'm not a fan of putting levies on the ballot by any means, but I think it's appropriate. I'm voting for it here because in terms of how well that's been extended, and also deferring to the professional expertise of our fire department, which has proven to be quite valuable.
Any other comment? Vice Mayor?
I would just note this is emergency legislation, and sometimes that causes people to get questioning why it needs to be an emergency. I know this is an emergency in large part, and maybe you can correct Mr. Medler. Non-emergency legislation is done in such a way so that it allows the opportunity for the public to ask for it to go to a vote. Because this has to go to a vote, because it's a millage ordinance, I assume declaring this emergency really makes no difference in the grand scheme of things.
So you're correct, because if this would go to a referendum, we would have a vote to decide if we want to have a vote. So, and that would be kind of confusing. People would see it on the ballot twice in a row thinking, oh, is this another tax, when actually it's the same thing. And just note that the state requires it to be a resolution only. It's by city charter that it's an ordinance. We weren't sure why that change was made, but we were following the charter.
Mr. Butler?
And also, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, it's also labeled as an emergency because of the timing of the need to get it on the ballot by February 2nd, I think it is.
That is correct. That's
Okay.
the deadline. It has to be 90 days before.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, read the resolution, please. I'm sorry, the ordinance.
Ordinance authorizing proceeding to levy a tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation for fire protection and emergency medical services within the city of Loveland and placing such levy on the May 3rd, 2022 election ballot and declaring an emergency.
Any comment on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Ordinance 17 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
The owner of 115 Carl Brown Way is requesting permission to install a directional sign in an area that would extend into the city's right-of-way. My interpretation of 107.01A of the City of Loveland Code of Ordinances requires that any real property belonging to the city to be sold, leased pursuant to an ordinance passed by council authorizing such sale after a public hearing. With that, I'm requesting that City Council set this for a public hearing for February 22nd, 2022. I've included a location of the property and a location, a rendering of where the sign would be located. Wanted to note that the Historic Preservation Committee has already approved the sign, the aesthetics. They gave it what we call a COA, a Certificate of Appropriateness. The layout of the land, this particular portion, the south side of South Carl Brown, does not have parking on this area. This would be a much better location, probably a safer location, and the most plausible. This directional sign is for multiple businesses, and as required, I am supposed to determine whether or not the property is used for any no longer needed for public purposes. As always, my caveat is in which the way our city solicitor will write it, as long as the city is able to provide the installation, removal, upgrade, expansion of all public utilities, including sidewalk, then it no longer is needed for public purpose.
All right, any questions, comments? Yes, Vice Mayor.
I'll make the motion to set a public hearing to review the granting of an easement on February 22nd, 2022 at or about 7 p.m. that pertains to this 115 Railroad Avenue property.
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
There is a mayor's court report and various committee
Mayor,
minutes.
I think that Mr. Phelps said Railroad Avenue? Is that what you heard? I mean, I don't know if it makes a difference.
Did you say railroad?
He did say railroad. I should have stopped him before we took the vote. I'm sorry. But it may make a difference, right?
Mr. Braun? All right. So
No, it's my fault. If you look at figure 1 on page 64, I wrote 115 Railroad Avenue.
You
Sorry
did.
about that. Sorry about that.
You're off the hook.
Sorry,
Sorry, Vice Mayor.
Dad, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. There was no
All right, so
second.
we need a motion.
Okay. How about this? I
Yes.
move to amend the notice of public hearing, that the hearing be scheduled to receive public comments regarding the proposed issuance of an easement along the right-of-way as requested by the owners of 115 Carl Brown Way.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Any comments on the various minutes that are in the packet? All right, under city council reports, I've been asked to just remind people that tickets are still available for the Loveland Valentine's Masquerade Ball, which will be on that Saturday, February 12th at 6:30 at the Landing Event Center. The event features live music, dinner, open bar, casino room, and an after party at Bishop's Quarter. Proceeds benefit the Candace M. Cook Scholarship Foundation for Excellence in Paramedic and Firefighter Education. Tickets are $65 for an individual, couples for $120. You can find information on loveandlife.loveland.com or at lsfdfire.ticketspice.com. Does anybody else have any other reports or comments to make? Yes, Mr. Blair.
There is a canard that has been persistent since well before the time I joined this body. And it's wrong, and I know it's wrong, and I'd like to just really quick dispense with it once again so that it doesn't come back, hopefully, anymore to bite us. And
Turn on your, sorry.
And it has to do with the fact that the property that the Homerama is being built on was purchased originally for $900,000 and ultimately sold for $300,000. And that is supposed to be a terrible deal. Well, yeah, you know, on the face of it, it probably is a terrible deal. But if I'm not mistaken, when we took the action to sell the property for $300,000, it was acknowledged that there was a TIF that would back that property that would ultimately pay off to the tune of, I'm going to say, like almost $2 million, so that the city, instead of buying the property and only for $900,000 and only getting $300,000, the city will ultimately get much closer to $2 million after after all is said and done, rather than a bad deal, this is a great deal. We talked tonight about the fact that we're investing $1 million plus or minus to fix up a literally crappy hole in the ground, because we're probably going to get upwards of, I don't know, but it's going to be a lot more than we spend. And it was unanimously agreed by this body that that was a good use of city money. What we did with the Homerama property was a good use of city money. Anybody who says or whispers to you that no, it was a bad deal and there's something shady about it doesn't know what they're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Any other city council reports or comments? All right, would someone like to make a motion to go into executive session?
I'll move for executive session under 121.22G1 and 121.22G3. G1 is to consider compensation of a public employee, and G3 is to conference with counsel relating to pending and imminent litigation.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Are we back on live, Tom? All right, it's 10:30, and we are back from executive session. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman? Mr. Bateman?
Andy?
Link your right eye if you say yes.
Andy, give a thumbs up.
Andy.
Is he frozen? Oh, there he is.
He's
Come.
moving.
Mr. Bateman?
Adjourn?
I can't hear you guys.
Do you want to leave?
Mr. Blair?
Speaking for the Paxton Rangers, no.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps? Yes. Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.